See, that wasn't so bad, was it? This is the Arsenal Real Reaction Show. Mikel Merino. What a game. Not. It was terrible. Wasn't it? All that matters that we got there in the end. All that matters is that we got there in the end, courtesy of Mikel Merino, of course, who we'll be talking about at length in today's show. Good morning to you all joining us. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Very much appreciate you being here. Thank you for your patience with the show over the last couple of days. I know there wasn't a show on Friday. Thank you for listening and tuning into yesterday morning's show. Of course, that was right before a 12:30 kickoff, so it was all irrelevant after like 4 hours. But thank you to Laura for jumping on. Thank you for your kind comments. Always appreciate you listening and tuning in. We do these shows, if you're new to the channel, every single day at 8 a.m. UK time, usually. Sometimes there's press conferences or airplane flights and things that get in the way, but usually we do the show at 8 a.m. every single morning. So thank you for those joining us in the chat. Shari, Stevie, we've got Matt G, we've got Steve, Granddaddy Gooner, Paul, we've got Arasilki, we've got Colin and Chima, Zoom and Gavin, we've got Rowan, Jitty, Mira, Lars, Paul, Loga, other Paul, it's our third Paul already this morning. Kish, Ronald, Natty, Tom, Mark, and Paul Jr. is I think fourth Paul of the morning. Boss Bula, Maximius, Glenn. Thank you to you all for tuning in. Really appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much, as usual, for clicking on and making this, as always, a part of your morning routines. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, please do drop a like on the video. Please do subscribe. All the usual YouTube-y stuff. Punk Hiker says, first time watching live. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated that you're here. So thank you for that. It was a cold, wet day yesterday. I left the house at about 7. There was no trains into London Victoria, meaning that I had to get a train through to Blackfriars and then change to get to St Pancras and then get a train up to Leicester. It's only like an hour up to Leicester, which is not as long as I remember it being. For those that are long-time listeners of the channel will know I went to university in Nottingham, and that meant that I had to go up through East Midlands kind of trains quite a lot through Leicester and into Nottingham. I swear it took like 2.5 hours or so to get there. It took like an hour to get to Leicester, and it was always like half an hour between Leicester and Nottingham. And I'll be doing that trip again in just over a week's time when we play Nottingham Forest in midweek, not next week, but the week after. Yeah, that was overall, despite the weather being bad and I think the feeling before the game being pretty dull, and just the overall consensus that we're feeling pretty sorry for ourselves right now. Overall, in the end, came out of the game feeling pretty darn good. But that wasn't the case until about 10 minutes before the end as well. And that came courtesy, of course, of one man, Mikel Merino. We got there in the end. Arsenal 2, Leicester City 0. And I just can't help but my immediate sense was, of course, relief. My second feeling was joy, obviously, and the support. Can I just say that the away support yesterday at the game, and I met a few people actually who watched the channel, just happened to be in and around, and on the way up and on the way back as well. And can I just say the support yesterday was absolutely excellent, absolutely stunningly good. And was such a joy to sit on the opposite side to where the fans were sitting on that day. Certainly it was just a great experience. I thought Leicester's atmosphere is pretty dead these days. There was a supposed protest about one of their sporting directors before the match. It didn't really get too much. I was told to look out for kind of people wearing yellow in the ground, and no one was really wearing yellow other than stewards. I don't know if that was an intentional thing, but Arsenal supporters were excellent yesterday, and certainly helped carry through the team until the end. But let's talk through the game, shall we? Arsenal's lineup, I think, is exactly what we expected. This was certainly mine and Laura's team that we put up yesterday. Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Lewis-Skelly, Partey, Rice, Odegaard, Raya, of course, in goal. And Nwaneri, Trossard and Sterling, with the Belgian playing as the centre forward. Now, there wasn't any surprises there, and I don't think there necessarily was too many surprises about how poor the first half performance was either, because the first half performance was awful. It was genuinely just insipid and dull and lacking any kind of energy and creativity. The only spark that really was there is the man in the picture on the screen, which was Nwaneri, who I thought really did all game take the game to the opposition, took the ball, drove with it, created problems. But overall, the first half was pretty dire. In particular, Raheem Sterling's performance. We'll come on to some more individual performances shortly. But goodness gracious me, I can't get my head around just quite how you can have so much kind of what's the word, opportunity. You can have so much kind of chance given to you in the case of Sterling, and it just wasn't grabbed. It wasn't shown. It wasn't in any way encouraging. But I'm getting tempted into talking about individual kind of moments here, and I'm going to do that a little bit later on. But overall, the first half was, while not necessarily surprising, it was ultimately a very poor first half. The second half was very, very different. And Nwaneri continued his fine work from that first half into the second and produced two moments of magic that were just so ever so slightly away from glory. The first, a shot from, coming from the right-hand side across to the left, fires, clips the bar as it flies over the net. Very close indeed. The second opportunity that he had on his right foot smashed onto the post, so firmly onto the post, it actually kind of rebounded back into play more centrally than even Nwaneri was when he took the strike, which shows you just quite how close he was with that effort. It shows you that ability that he can use both feet. It shows you his bravery. It shows you his drive, his determination, his confidence. And in the second half, it was anything but boring, the game, because it certainly brought to life Leicester as well. Leicester had opportunities. Leicester had chances. Arsenal were creating opportunities for themselves. Declan Rice had that opportunity to kind of cut the ball across goal to Raheem Sterling. It wasn't the best of passes, but Sterling's kind of just standing on his heels, not really looking to make play towards the ball. But overall, it definitely improved. But Arsenal could have lost this game if it wasn't for Myles Lewis-Skelly. What an amazing world-class piece of defending this is. I use this image on the screen, which shows you and highlights the position, because I want you to look at, we've all looked at this replay, we've all seen this over and over and over again. But look at Raya. Look how far Raya is. Of course, Raya's come out because the ball was coming from the left-hand side, and so he's got to try and block the cross. So there's nothing wrong with Raya's positioning. But when you produce a cross as good as what was produced on that left-hand side, I think it was Jordan Ayew that produced it, it gives the goalkeeper very little opportunity here, other than if he gets a touch to kind of push it round any kind of other players coming in at the back post. But if it beats the keeper and it's good enough to beat the keeper, which it was, you need your other player to be absolutely alive. You may remember the game against Newcastle away from home, where Alexander Isak has a shot, the ball rebounds to the back post, and Jacob Murphy's just there to tap the ball in because no one's chased in the last man. Well, Myles Lewis-Skelly on this occasion was alive and alert to read the danger, chased in the last man at the back post, and produces one of the best defensive touches you will ever see. It was absolutely fantastic to see this bit of defending, this bit of awareness and intuitiveness to produce such a brilliant piece. And people might say I'm going over the top on this. I don't think I am at all. I asked Mikel Arteta after the game his thoughts about it. He said he wasn't able to watch the he wasn't able to watch the replay of the incident immediately, and of course came in afterwards to get kind of his thoughts on things. Let me find you the exact quote. I said, I want to go back to the Lewis-Skelly moment because it was only 8 minutes before Mikel Merino scored. It seemed such an incredible touch, a moment of maturity to know what type of touch to take in that moment. Could you give me a reaction when you saw the ball trickle across the goal? And he says, well, to be fair, on the bench, I didn't know whether he touched it or not. It was a deflection before the cross came in. But when I watched it back in the dressing room, it was amazing because it was one of the moments where he should have changed the moment in the game. And it probably changed the result. And it did change the result. There's no doubt in my mind if Arsenal concede this, title's done. Game's lost. I don't think we get back into it. Just the mental blow that this has on the team. I think it's very, very hard to get back into the game after this goes in, especially as late as it was, I think, like 75th minute in the game. But then, of course, I don't know why this says MLS drops the Haaland celebration. That's not right. Ignore that. Don't ignore, however, the man on the picture, Mikel Merino, because he produces an absolutely fantastic header. And again, you have to give credit to Ethan Nwaneri on the day as well, who produces not just some brilliant. I'm just going to change that. Not just some brilliant moments in the game whereby he nearly scores 2 fantastic goals, but also where he's in a position to create the opportunity for Mikel Merino to produce just a stunningly good piece of aerial play. And, you know, we'd lacked, I think, most of that going into this game. I think we'd lacked the ability for Arsenal to be a threat from crosses, because when you've got Leandro Trossard there, you're not really going to be looking to ping too many balls into the box. We had a few corners that didn't really lead to too much. Gabriel got his head onto one of them, I think, in the first half. Didn't really lead to anything. But as soon as Mikel Merino came on, it gave us a focal point. It gave us a target man. It gave us the opportunity to start putting crosses into the box with a little bit more finesse and curl and whip and danger. And the cross from Nwaneri is perfect. And Merino's header is equally as impactful and directed and precise in where he wanted it. And he became a goal threat. And it was, I think I agree with Captain Presence here. It was a Giroud-esque in its brilliance. And of course, he didn't stop there, because just, I think it was 4 or so minutes later, we break through the middle of the park. Odegaard through to the left-hand side. Calafiori, I think it was, then plays the ball to Trossard. Trossard with another brilliant left-footed cross. Trossard has produced some brilliant left-footed crosses this season. There was one earlier in the campaign where he managed to get the ball onto Havertz's foot. I think you'll probably remember for the volley. But yeah, stunningly good cross. And at the back post, it's not an easy finish, this, for Mikel Merino, as he's coming in on his left foot, has to direct the ball into the corner, past the goalkeeper, into a very small gap. It's a really, really good striker's finish for Merino, to which point that seals the game. Pressure's off. Game is won. And afterwards, of course, and the songs and the noise coming from the Arsenal fans was just something to bask in and appreciate and enjoy. It was continued through to the train on the way home. Many Arsenal fans, of course, singing that song. As soon as we arrived at St Pancras, off the train, chants continuing through the station, people looking around thinking, what's going on? Oh, of course, what's going on? Mikel Merino has scored. Really good. Really, really good performance and an encouraging moment for Arsenal. And of course, I think a bit for Mikel Arteta to think about as well, and whether or not he is the, he was asked, I think, by Alex Howe from BBC, whether or not it's too simple to say that he's now the solution. He says, yes, we're going to have to share that, and we know that. We're going to have various contexts. Sometimes we're going to have to make a sub because a player is not performing. Guess who that's about? Or because the opposition is doing something else, or because he's got a yellow card, or he's fatigued. And that's going to restrict what we can do, really, in terms of personnel. But we have prepared for different scenarios, and then those scenarios have to work. Hopefully, they will work as good as Mikel worked today. Now, does this mean that you just kind of start Merino up front against West Ham next week? I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure if that is the answer immediately from the off. Of course, these goals were scored from the bench. These goals were impactful. These goals came later on in the game. Just because Marouane Fellaini came off the bench and scored headers didn't mean that he started games suddenly at centre-forward for Manchester United or Everton. But it is something to consider when we are lacking so many options. It could be that, as we've talked about before, that we play something of it. There was a strange shift to like a 4-4-2 during the game. We saw Rice and Merino kind of ahead of Odegaard and Partey. It was a very strange moment to see us playing in that 4-4-2 shape with those two individuals in particular so far up the pitch and producing moments of chances for Arsenal. But is this... I'll be curious, do people now think that we need to just throw Mikel Merino up front? because it wasn't something that was like preordained was going to happen. So I know there was a lot of jokes made in the build up to this game about the idea of Merino being played there, but it wasn't necessarily something that was too thought out, to my understanding. It was just a consideration that Merino, of course, has got excellent aerial ability, and the ability to arrive into the box as well was always something that put him in good stead to get a big move to a club like Arsenal from his dealings at Real Sociedad. Is it this now Arsenal's answer? Well, I guess that we will find out in the weeks to come. I thought Odegaard, who had a very, just like everybody else in the field, really, a quite poor first half. I thought Odegaard was so much better in the second period. I thought it was night and day when you looked at their performances, really, for so many of the team. And Odegaard, I thought, really stepped up in the second half of this game. I thought the way in which he progressed the ball, turned out of danger, produced some fantastic spreading passes to the wide areas to get Arsenal going and attacking. He did create a couple of opportunities in the first half, which obviously chipped through to Leandro Trossard. I thought he should have done better with the opportunity that Odegaard actually created for him in the first period. But in the second half, it was a much, much, much better performance from Odegaard, and his contribution to the game definitely led to the opportunities that we created that ultimately put us in a position where you would say at the full-time whistle, Arsenal was certainly worthy of the win, and Odegaard had a play. And he's got to have these types of performances over a longer period of time, over much more of the game. With so many of our key starters out, the onus is going to fall on players like Martin Odegaard to put in these levels, to deliver. And ultimately, the first half was not good enough, but the second half certainly was. And he produced a much, much better performance in that second period of the game. I don't really have any words to write. I probably have a lot of words to speak about Raheem Sterling's display on the day. It was just so dead and dull and frustrating and lazy. Like the offsides are absolutely maddening that he can be offside in so many of those moments. I had my editor was messaging during the game, and I'll read you the comment he said. Let me find where it was. Breaking up their own play rather than allowing Leicester to do it. I thought it summed it up perfectly. Sterling broke up our own attacks by being offside. Trossard, by the way, also caught quite painfully in offside positions as well in the first half. And I don't, besides Trossard's assist, didn't offer too much as a centre forward. And I think that probably is an indication of what needs to happen with Trossard moving forwards. I don't think he can start at centre forward for us really too effectively. I think his role is to be off the left. If that means putting Sterling through the middle when we bring him on or give him opportunities to play, that might be the way forwards. I just don't think I want to see Trossard there. I think I'd rather use Trossard in his best role. And then if you've got somebody that has to play out of position, just play them out of position in the centre forward position. Just play them in that position. That, I think, is the way in which we need to utilise our team, is that to remove as much of kind of the versatility as possible. Play the players that we've got in their best positions, and then limit the amount of square pegs in round holes as we can. So start Trossard on the left, start Nwaneri on the right, and then come up with a solution through that centre forward position. And if that's Merino, then great. If it's somebody else, then great. But I don't think Trossard is the guy. And equally, certainly more so, Sterling is not the guy. And I still think needs to be a player that, if he does get opportunities, it's going to be mainly from the bench. But Mikel Arteta just wants this team to fight. We are down to bare bones here. We're in a position where we are going to struggle to produce the levels that we've seen in recent times. A 5-1 win over Manchester City that had both Martinelli and Havertz available to us is a big indication of that. We need to find a way of just delivering goals when we can and staying resolute. Shout outs to Gabriel, Timber, Lewis-Skelly, and Partey. And did I mention Gabriel? I think I did. Defensively, we looked pretty sharp. Obviously, Partey made that quite vital error that nearly did cost us the game. But outside of that error, I thought Partey was good. Saliba, I thought, was back to his usual best as well after a little bit of a tricky period himself. I think it's just going to be a case of a war of attrition between now and when we get some players back at the very minimum. And when Martinelli comes back, of course, that is going to be a benefit as well. And hopefully he's back after the next international break. But of course, we've got quite four very different challenges coming up. West Ham at home, Nottingham Forest away, Man United away, Chelsea at home. These are not walkover ties, even when you've got your players fit. We need to take them very seriously, and we need to hope that we've got enough to be able to deliver during these moments. But we just need to just find our way through these games. We just need to find our way to the net and find our way to get goals. Because if we get a goal, then I have a lot of confidence that we can shut a lot of teams out. It's just getting that lead that has proven so tricky for Arsenal in recent times. Holding on to it, has also been something of a challenge at moments, because I think we've tried to go for the second goal, maybe when we should have been a little bit more savvy. The Aston Villa game, of course, 2-0 up. You cannot be dropping points there. It's incredibly frustrating to see Arsenal have dropped points from winning positions this campaign. But this time around, it's a very different scenario, a very different context. And as a result, Arsenal need to take that into consideration if indeed they get a goal in certain points of a game, and where those goals, of course, come from as well. Right, let's go to part two, shall we? And some of your questions and thoughts and queries and posts from our comment section right after this. Okay, this is part two of the show. We jump into the chat box, tackle some of your comments and questions as well. And I'm looking forward to taking on as many of these as I can. So let's just jump straight to Diallo, who says, if we can lock up. Yeah, it is lock up. Kudus and Bowen. I can't think. I can think that we will slap them easily. We can't afford to give away stupid goals because we work so hard to score one for ourselves. They are the big threats. West Ham have not been particularly great, even after the appointment of Graham Potter. Arsenal should be expected to win this. This is a game that we lost last season. And so it would be, of course, a net gain on points if Arsenal managed to get a result in this one. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be a tough one. But Arsenal should still, we think, have enough at home to try and beat West Ham. Jasper says, surely we need to go for Mbeumo in the summer as well as a striker. Saka needs competition. He can't. I mean, isn't that Nwaneri, Jasper? Is not Nwaneri that player for us? Pretty sure that he is. Captain Present says we could be potentially 10 points behind Liverpool. We need to take the race right up until Anfield, meaning that we have to win every game until then. And I don't really see how anything other than that is what Arsenal would need to do to win the title. I think we have to win probably every game. If Arsenal are going to win the league, I think we have to win the game. It's worth bearing in mind that Arsenal are 15 games unbeaten now in the league. Arsenal haven't lost a game since, was it Bournemouth? Was Bournemouth the last time we were beaten? Matches, results. When was the last time Arsenal were beaten? Bournemouth was when? October 19th. Have we lost a game since that point? Oh, Newcastle. Was Newcastle the last time we lost a game? I think it might have been. Yeah, looks like it. So Newcastle away was the last time that Arsenal lost a game. And that in itself, considering all the challenges we have faced, the fact that Arsenal have not since lost a league game since November 2nd, we are well past 4 months having not lost a league game to this point. James says the longest unbeaten run since 2011. It's quite the stat. Thank you for that, James. Incredible, really, when you consider how many players we've lost, considering we've been without Bukayo Saka during this period, that we've been without Gabriel Jesus since January, since we haven't brought in any players of our own accord, since other players like Ben White have been missing as well, since red cards and chaotic moments, since we've played Liverpool and played Man City and played some other very challenging opponents as well in that time, that we've still managed to we've still managed to go unbeaten during that period. And yeah, we've drawn games that have dropped us points, of course, and that's a frustration. A draw against Chelsea, a draw against Fulham, a draw against Everton, a draw against who's the other draw? Brighton as well. Though, I mean, when you look at those results, right, the draws in those games. So the draw against Chelsea, we have a goal ruled out, obviously, for offside in that game. We take the lead in that. Neto scores a very good one. I still think Arsenal are arguably the better side in that game and should have won. You look at the draw against Fulham, Martinelli is an inch away from producing a cross that wins us the game if he isn't offside in that moment. The Everton game was the West Ham game from last season. It's just a game where you have a chance after chance after chance after chance, and somehow Jordan Pickford has an absolute blinder in goal that day. Brighton, we all know. Awful penalty. Terrible penalty decision. And the Aston Villa game with 2 goals up. We should be more. And we let Aston Villa get back into it. Poor defending. Very, very frustrating indeed. But then we managed to go and beat Manchester City 5-1. Now we've gone to Leicester without a striker and won 2-0. Those draws are annoying. They're frustrating, but they are still points that are keeping us in touching distance. And that's what we need to do. And I was with, Clive on TalkSport the other day. And Clive says, we just need to stay in touch. Stay in the room. Just stay in touch. Keep the pressure on. Keep picking up the points. Take advantage of Liverpool. Liverpool, of course, today playing against Wolves at home. I would not be expecting anything really from that result. Wolves, of course, are fighting for their lives down there at the bottom of the table. They did beat Aston Villa in their last game, which hopefully gives some encouragement that they may have found some form. But that was 2 weeks ago now. So I don't know. Did they play in the FA Cup? Wolves results. They beat Bristol City in the FA Cup in the 3rd round, and they beat Blackburn in the 4th round. So they've won their last couple of games, scored 4 goals. Matheus Cunha has been on the score sheet in both of those, so we can keep a little bit of hope up. But I'm not expecting a lot. I'm not expecting that game, of course, at 2:00 this afternoon between Liverpool and Wolves. I imagine that many of you will be watching that. But it's the games that are coming up where they have to go to Villa, they have to go to City, they have to face some pretty challenging opponents. And Arsenal just need to stay in the room. We have to just stay in the room. So it's as simple as that. And says, Tom, good victory, however. That's all that Anthony has to say. 3 words before we got onto an Anthony negative post. However, are you trying to tell me that this club is not going to get a free agent to help us going forward? Are the club that stubborn and don't want to hear that there is no one available? I mean, who, mate? Who are you signing as a free agent? I really don't think any of those are. And I've looked through the list. None of them are changing anything for Arsenal. None of them are taking Arsenal to a title. None of those options, I'm sorry, are taking Arsenal to a title. So I'm not going to sit here and complain if Arsenal don't sign a body as a free agent. I'm just not, because there just isn't a single player on that list that I look at and go, yeah, let's sign them on a free. Let's sign players that have barely even kicked a ball. 48-year-old Carlos Vela, 36-year-old Diego Costa. As Benny says, free agents can't help us. It's better to run with the kids than bring in some random player. There were loans available in January that I would have moved for, but I'm not. Free agents is just absolutely a no-go. Peter says, with PSR and FFP being a thing, should we spend the bulk, if not all of our budget, on a striker? Or do we need to be savvy, seeing as we may need to recruit in other positions as well? We're going to need to recruit across the board. We are losing a lot of players in the summer. There's going to be a significant turnover. Contracts are coming to an end. We need to strengthen. The idea of signing Alexander Isak for all of our budget and then say he gets injured, what happens then? You spend £150 million on a striker and then he gets injured. That's the problem that we have ultimately got. If we make that mistake in the market, it's very hard to look at that and justify why we spent our entire budget on just a striker when we need, of course, to spend it on a number of different options. And that's why I'm more in favour of looking at, say, a Sesko at the moment. Marugana says, why do we keep looking back? It's like saying Liverpool can win all of their games. Clive is right. Just stay in touch until Saka and Martinelli come back. Thomas says, Salah had a quiet game against Everton. Is he perhaps tired? I hope so. He's just had a week off. Should have been fine. Perry says, clearly Nwaneri is good enough to start. What will we do when Saka comes back? Soon we will have a huge, huge bid for the likes of Nwaneri. How do we keep him satisfied? Well, who's to say that Nwaneri can't start with Saka? I remember a pre-season game against Manchester United earlier on the season where he produced an absolutely fantastic cross from the left for Gabriel Jesus. So who is to say that Ethan Nwaneri cannot start on that left-hand side? A number of times during the game yesterday, there's a lovely couple of step overs and then a drive towards the byline before a right-footed on his weaker foot cross. If that's what you can do on his right foot, I'd be very keen to see what you can do on his left foot, producing for a centre forward in the middle from the left. I don't think there's any reason not to try Ethan Nwaneri when Saka returns on the left. And it's worth pointing out as well that Saka, when he returns, is going to be eased back in. So we're going to have times where Saka is on the bench, when Nwaneri starts, when Saka starts and comes off after 50, 60 minutes, and we bring on Nwaneri. We need to manage both of their minutes. But this is why you have, we can't sit there and say, how can we keep a player satisfied, and then say that we need to have competitive depth in all of our positions? How can you expect Arsenal to have competitive depth in all positions and then worry about Ethan Nwaneri's minutes when Saka returns? We need competitive minutes in all positions. Arteta needs to be better at rotating. Arteta needs to be more astute at how he changes the formation and makes substitutions during games. And Ethan Nwaneri is going to be a big part of that. We still see people madly saying that we need to go and sign Brian Mbeumo. You saw that comment earlier on in the video. We don't need to sign Brian Mbeumo. We have our right winger. We have our competitive depth for that side, and his name is Ethan Nwaneri. Lee says, Tom, is it time to introduce one of the academy youngsters up front? I mean, I don't think so. I think we just need to crack on with Mikel Merino. I think we need to crack on with other options. But I think we need to give them some minutes, some game time, because it was very, very poor from Sterling. I'll be more inclined to use Sterling through the middle than I would be on the left. If he's going to play, and I wouldn't start him, but if he's going to play, I'd be more inclined to put him there, just because it means he doesn't have to do as much running. He doesn't have to stand in too many offside positions on the left-hand side. I'd rather have Trossard there, I think. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Seb says, we also need to manage Saka better. He needs to play less minutes. Clive says, am I the only one that feels Zinchenko is underused more offensively? We have to rethink how we use players, maybe like him. I mean, he's just not getting any minutes at all at the moment. I don't know if there's something behind the scenes, Clive, that we're unaware of. Maybe it's something in training. He's not impressing or whatever. Calafiori is ahead of him. Lewis-Skelly is ahead of him. We're not using Zinchenko. Tierney is ahead of him. Tierney came on yesterday, of course, as well. Zinchenko is just not being used. So I don't know if there's something going on that we're not privy to. But he's not getting much game time whatsoever. Top Dog says, how do we say Sterling plays again at all? Because we're so short, mate. I'd love to sit here and say that we never have to use him again because he hasn't been good enough. And so his performance has been, frankly, deplorable. And there are no excuses for some of the displays that we've seen from him. But we're so short that we have to. We're so short that we can't be naive enough to realise that we're going to have to carry the burden. We can't sit here and complain about Arteta running players into the ground and then not use players like Sterling that are available to us. So we need to be careful. Maximia says, Tom, is there a case for both Nwaneri and Saka to be used together in our 11? That would be some killer forward line with Odegaard behind them. And how did you find Odegaard yesterday? First half poor, second half very good. Much, much better from Odegaard in the second half. First half was not good, but second half he very, very much improved, and that was very, very encouraging indeed. Jojo Louis says, what are the lessons of this game? Trossard not a 9, Sterling way past it, Merino as a Giroud replacement. You pretty much took the words out of my mouth, Jojo. So yeah, I can't disagree too much with that. Trossard, don't play him in the number 9. I think we play him, in the wider area when indeed we have to. Sterling, if you're going to use him, fits and spurts and probably not in that wide position. And then ultimately, Mikel Merino is got to be considered as an option for us in the box. Doesn't necessarily mean as a 9, but maybe as something as kind of a midfield diamond that plays with 2 wide players that are ahead of the midfield. And that's a shape that maybe we need to think about. Dale says, Tom, why has Arteta abandoned all the brick by brick and cement layering gimmick regarding Ranieri? Gimmick? I mean, what choice does he have, mate? Are you saying that you wouldn't be starting, or you shouldn't be starting Nwaneri now? You're saying Nwaneri shouldn't be playing as many minutes as he's wearing. It's about brick by brick when you've got everybody available. But when we're in the position that we've got, what choice do we have, mate? I don't think that's a very well-informed comment. I just don't. We don't have the choice. but to play Ethan Nwaneri in every game for the majority of those games. We need to try and protect him if we can. If we are winning by a certain number of goals, yes, we can protect those minutes. But he absolutely had to bring him in slowly. And as a result, I think we're seeing the benefit of that as well. A lot of people wanted to rush Ethan Nwaneri in. Well, I'm kind of glad that we didn't, because we're seeing the benefit of those gradual kind of integration of the likes of both Myles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri. So not the best of comments. NK says, I will always check Real Sociedad matches and always sees with Mendy stats. He gets yellow cards a whole lot, and I hope it wouldn't be reds when he comes to the Premier League as well. Obviously crossed as a Mendy bridge more so when we get to the summer, but there's no doubt that he remains one of the key, most impressive defensive midfielders there are on the market, if not the most impressive on the market defensive midfielder for Arsenal to replace Thomas Partey with. And there's a reason why all of Europe's elite clubs have been very much keen on trying to convince him to join Arsenal top of the pile right now. Jamsey says, is there not a chance that a 2 to 3 game run Sterling finds some form through continued minutes as opposed to relying on him to be on top form playing sporadic minutes across a season? I mean, there's a chance, but I mean, I'd argue that just look to Chelsea. Look to players like Mykhailo Mudryk. Look to players like Christopher Nkunku. Look to players that are at Chelsea right now who have played plenty of minutes and are not playing themselves into form. So there's an argument, yes, but absolutely not. Lee says, Tom, if one of the big rags came calling, would your morning show cease? Lee, no. My intention is to very much keep this show going. And that was always a big part of when I took the recent role that I've got now, that the 8 a.m. show would go. Of course, there are going to be times where I can't do it because I'll be on a flight or there'll be an early morning press conference, but I still try and produce content for you when I'm not able to do it live. So no, the intention is very much staying and doing this for as long as feasibly is that my body allows. Ashley says, is Arteta playing 3D chess with Saka's health? Feel he'll be back in the second leg against Man United. Club Arteta and Saka leave this relationship vibes alone. Fake injuries for interlols. I mean, I sincerely hope that Arsenal are more savvy when it comes to players and international duty. You know, we've got one coming up, and I really don't see why Declan Rice should have to play in that, but he will. But I hope that we are going to get any. Gavin says, can you see Dowman getting any minutes? He can't. There's laws in place that stop us from using Max Dowman. So not until next season, Gavin. Tom says, we know what forwards and midfields will target. What are some defender targets that you think we'll look at, more specifically centre-backs? We're going to lose some defenders in the summer, just trying to see potential targets. I think there's a chance that we see Kiwior leave. Of course, we've got Calafiori. We've got Ben White coming back. I think Tomiyasu's not going to be available for a long time, so we might need to have a look at bringing in kind of a right-sided, versatile Tomiyasu type defender. Who that is a very hard question. I think we'll have to wait and see what players the club end up moving for, but I'm sure people have got some ideas in their mind. I think obviously Yoral Hato, more of a left-sided defender, is someone that the club have looked at a hell of a lot in the last couple of years, to be fair. Matt says, Tom, do you remember the first ever live football match that you watched? Randomly, despite living in London my whole life, the first live match I saw was Barcelona against Celta Vigo in the Camp Nou. Yeah, it would have been a very local. It would have been Gillingham, who were the local team for where I was born. That would have been the first live game I think I ever saw. So not exactly the most high-profile game. Ashton says, pure question. I'm genuinely curious. Is there a change Sterling could play better through the middle? I think I mentioned that on this very show, Ashton. So I said, if you are going to use Sterling, maybe it is taking him out of those wide areas and putting him more in the middle if he's going to have more of an impact, because the wide position just doesn't seem to be suiting him all that much. Maximus says, there's a proper lack of ambition from Sterling. I saw him step away of challenges, unable to read the game, not ready to learn from his mistakes, and hence I don't think a sustained run will help him. Ed says, I'd like to see Arsenal play with 5 at the back, or at least maybe give it a try. Ishmael says, Tom, do you think that we can do this in terms of the title? I mean, there's always that chance, isn't there? There's always a very small chance. I don't think that there is in any way a wild level of optimism that we're going to win the title this season. I just don't see it. but there's obviously always a very small chance. Just says we should have got Marmoush. I was waiting for this comment. Arsenal couldn't have spent £72 million on a player in that window, mate. So that wasn't going to happen. IK says Mika Bira seems to be doing good things in France. Let's give Butler or Odegaard a chance. It's very different. It's not just like one or the other. It's just not the same, I'm afraid. Look, Mika Biereth, when he was at Arsenal, was doing okay. He went to RKC Waalwijk on loan and did all right, and it wasn't pulling up trees in the Netherlands second tier by any stretch of the imagination. Went on loan to Sturm Graz, did very well, scored a decent number of goals, but again, it wasn't like an amazing run of goals that would make us rethink, his future. And obviously, we weren't ever really in a position to give Mika Biereth many, many minutes at all. He then left permanently, 4 million plus add-ons. Arsenal in the end, I think, got over close to 6 million in the end for Mika Biereth, with the add-ons, of course, that were brought in from that sale to Monaco. And he's doing a very, very good job at Monaco. So, yeah, I think that's one that people need to move on from. I mean, most people weren't even talking about him when he was at Sturm Graz. And, now he's gone to Monaco. He's scoring goals all of a sudden. It's, look at the mistake we made. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I don't think that pathway for Biereth is at Arsenal, if indeed he stays at Arsenal and doesn't go to Sturm Graz permanently. Ashton says we threw away a similar lead against City in our first title race a long time ago. I still remain hopeful for the title, but Liverpool is a must-win. If you're expecting Arsenal to win the league still after the number of injuries that we've suffered, I think that's incredibly unrealistic. But there's always a chance. But I'm not expecting us to win the title with the players that we've lost. I just don't think it's feasible. Anyway, thank you so much as always for tuning in. We're going to round the show off there. It's been an absolute pleasure joining you, as it always is. Have a fantastic Sunday. Enjoy yourselves. Of course, if you're able to take your mind off football, always do that. It's just a game, and even after a win, I'm minded to remind you to look after your mental health as usual. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, giving you all the latest Arsenal updates, reacting, of course, to that Liverpool Wolves game. Let's keep those fingers crossed that we can get the result that we absolutely need, because we do need it. We absolutely do need it. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.